Robin Smart has been the public education coordinator with the Alzheimer Society since 2005. Previous to that, she worked in long-term care since the age of 16. She's got some experience behind her. She started there working as a nursing aide. Over the years, she worked in a variety of departments, including dietary, recreation, activation, and for many years as the admission coordinator for the local long-term care home. Robin's degrees are from the University of Guelph, and she has her master's degree, which focused on helping people adapt to congregate living. Robin has also worked as a member of the special palliative care team in long-term care with people living with intellectual and developmental disabilities at the Kiwanis camp in Bellwood. Okay, so thank you very much, Robin. And actually, oh yeah, she said in here that she's the public education coordinator for the Alzheimer's Society.
I am one of two. We have two public education coordinators. So I'm not but I am a public education coordinator.
Okay. And actually, I like that we have both of our local Alzheimer's societies represented here today. Elaine, also a personal friend. I really like to have friends at the Alzheimer's Society. It's, your go-to for reaching out to people and for, getting information, getting support. So please build relationships wherever you are located with your local Alzheimer's societies because they're a wealth of knowledge and support for your families. Okay, go ahead, Robin.
Thank you, Paula. Just to follow up on that comment, every single centimeter of Canada has an Alzheimer's Society. So if you are not from Wellington, Waterloo, and you are not from Dufferin, and you are on the call, you too will have an Alzheimer's Society in your area. Our services are offered at no charge, so please don't hesitate to reach out. There's my little plug for the AS Society. Now let us move on. So what we wanted to talk about today, a tiny bit about Downs and Alzheimer's. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I thought a good setup because I wasn't sure exactly who would be on the call. We're going to define ambiguous loss, look at some different types of grief, talk about paradoxical thinking, and some ideas for support. What I'm going to do is move us on to talk about just to ensure that we all have the same information and to emphasize the importance of today's topic as the number of people living with both Down syndrome and dementia increases. That's why I've included this slide. So thanks to recent medical advancements, people with Down syndrome are living longer than before, usually now into their 50s and 60s. The baseline can be used when assessing the individual has experienced a decline in cognitive ability or functioning. It can be helpful to conduct regular testing, which is something that I'm sure you are all doing now with the NGD tools, because what you want to do is you want to monitor things like cardiovascular health, diabetes. You want to differentiate between other conditions that may present with similar symptoms as dementia. And you want to be doing that baseline and that testing ideally at age 30, every year after the age 30 with an individual who has Down syndrome. And Elaine alluded to the fact, the suggestion is about 20 years in advancement. So if you're looking at somebody who is chronologically age 30 with Down syndrome, physiologically you're looking at age 50. Want to talk a bit about warning signs in dementia in a person with Down syndrome. And often the first sign of dementia in individuals with Down syndrome is changes in their behavior and personality. In an individual with Down syndrome, it's essential to pay attention to behavioral changes. Things like reduced empathy, social withdrawal, emotional instability, apathy. That's where your get up and go is just got up and went. Another warning sign that can be, if an individual is living with Down syndrome, is people experiencing seizures for the first time in their lives. So although the Alzheimer's Society puts out 10 possible warning signs of dementia, which are legitimate and you should know, there are also some specific things that are really targeted for people who have intellectual disabilities and Down syndrome that are just a little bit different. So I put just a few stats on here. I think it's really important that, sadly, the incidence of Alzheimer's disease is 3 to 5 times greater for folks with Down syndrome in the general population. But it's important to know that not everybody, not 100% of people with Down syndrome will develop and exhibit the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Even if plaques and tangles develop in the brain, they may not show behavioral changes. Risk does increase with age. That's true for everybody. And then 25% of individuals with Down syndrome over the age of 35 display symptoms. So you want to stay on top of that. Now, this is one of the handouts that we had for you. I was going to throw all these links into the chat so you could have them. So what we'll do is I will make these slides available to Tara, and all of the links are live. So this is an 8-page booklet. It's easily accessible. You can just Google and bring it up. It's available for free. And although this is all about Down syndrome, and I know the talk isn't about dementia and Downs today, I thought this was a great base information for people to build from. We're here to focus on the pervasive non-physical aspects of dementia, the situation we may experience with the loss of abilities and skills that's caused by Alzheimer's disease or other dementias. So that's what we're going to move on to. So grief and loss. And often when we say those two words, immediately people think death. And yes, grief and loss definitely associated with death. But when we are talking about dementia, grief and loss, they come to us long before the death occurs. And what we're going to talk about is the very distinctive loss in dementia that is ambiguous loss. That's a term associated with dementia. So when you look at the pictures on the screen right now, you see examples. I tried to pick pictures that were examples of maybe hopes and dreams that people may have had for their futures. But now, if they have dementia, that has changed. These pictures actually illustrate the ambiguous loss that can be associated with dementia. People who develop Alzheimer's may not be able to do their hobbies or enjoy sports or interact with friends or grow old as they had dreamed of doing. So for the rest of the talk, let's look at the terms grief and ambiguous loss and consider what we might do to mitigate the effects of us as staff, as our clients and our residents, families and friends. So technically, if you start looking at grief, they divide it into 3 types. Now, there are many types of grief, but we're just going to focus on these 3 particular types today. And what we're going to do is explore loss and grief as they're typically encountered as part of the experience of living with and caring for a person who has dementia. So there's anticipatory grief, ambiguous loss, and disenfranchised grief. Start with an anticipatory grief. And it is the present reaction to the losses expected in the future. Because when you hear that diagnosis, when you hear people consider it bad news. When you hear this person has dementia, even though they are the way they are today, our minds jump ahead. What does this mean? What does the future hold? For staff and family care partners, grieving can start long before the person with dementia passes away. Anticipatory grief often starts when a person is diagnosed with dementia and or their health begins to deteriorate. Feelings are related to the loss of what was and or what people thought life was going to be like. And it can be difficult to speak with others about anticipatory grief because the person you care for is still alive, and you may have mixed feelings of guilt or confusion as to why you're feeling this kind of grief. The losses experienced in relation to dementia are somewhat different than the anticipatory loss and grief which can occur in other illnesses. For example, the person with dementia may anticipate loss in their abilities to be independent and in their communication. And staff and families may anticipate the loss of the person as they are and the death of the person. It's the progressive decline in communication and memory caused by dementia that may mean that there's no longer a chance for family members or friends to finish unfinished business or to share feelings as dementia progresses. And these losses and the grief resulting from these losses, it's further complicated by ambiguity and mixed emotions. So let's think about this. With ambiguous loss, there are really two types of losses. There's physical loss, which can include transitioning from a home to a long-term care home. It can happen when people go missing. It's non-dementia specific examples, maybe adoption or divorce. It's like leaving without a goodbye. Physically, the person isn't there anymore. So it's a physical absence and a psychological presence. That's physical loss. Psychological loss, on the other hand, that describes a situation in which your person is physically present but psychologically absent. This can happen in cases where the brain is affected and then it impacts the behavior of the individual. Psychological loss can affect someone in terms of losing a sense of who they are, and it can affect family and friends. The things that make a person, what makes us, what makes them, such as sense of humor, shared memories, personality, that starts to change and maybe fade away when dementia is present. So if somebody has Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, or maybe they're an addict, or maybe they have chronic mental illness, or maybe they have a brain injury, this is where you have that psychological loss, where they're physically there, but they're not there cognitively the same way. And in both types of ambiguous loss, whether it's the physical or the psychological ambiguous loss, there can be confusion. Is the loss temporary or is it final? Sometimes there's reorganization of relationships and roles, but sometimes there isn't. And if there is no reorganization as dementia progresses, that can freeze a family sort of in place. Sometimes there's a lack of symbolic rituals that ordinarily support a clear loss. If somebody dies, there's a funeral or a wake, or you're sitting Shiva. These are symbolic rituals, but those don't happen usually when somebody's diagnosed with dementia. What you will notice, withdrawal of external supports, and often dementia can last anywhere from 2 to 20 years. Care partner and staff, fatigue, and exhaustion. So a wide range of grief responses are expected, and they can actually be normalized by naming and acknowledging the type of loss. And it may be important for you to hear that you're having a normal response to an abnormal situation. So let's focus on ambiguous loss for now. Ambiguous loss, it's unique and it's a common type of loss to the dementia experience. It's the type of loss you feel when a person with dementia is physically here, but may not be mentally or emotionally present in the same way as before. This kind of loss leaves a person searching for answers, and it can complicate and extend the process of grieving. You know, this term, ambiguous loss, it was developed by family therapist and researcher Pauline Boss back in the 1970s. Boss's early work actually involved families of soldiers who went missing in action. And later she worked with families of people who had Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. And she noticed that there were similarities in the experiences. The fact that dementia is incurable creates the deepest and the longest lasting ambiguity. And Boss asserts that this is the most devastating type of loss because it remains indeterminate. It leads to symptoms that are painful, that are sometimes missed or misdiagnosed. So for individuals and families experiencing ambiguous loss, they might experience depression, anxiety, hopelessness, helplessness, confused identity, withdrawal from family and friends, or they might find that they're putting their life on hold. And there can be family conflict. Ambiguous loss is actually sometimes referred to as frozen grief. The problem is the loss itself and the extraordinary circumstances of multiple and continuing losses. As Elaine pointed out this morning, when we're looking at an incurable dementia, it's irreversible. It is progressive, so it worsens over time. The losses people have, they get more severe, and they collect some new losses along the way as well. So it can be a bit of a roller coaster of finding moments of clarity for people living with dementia and then losing again. That clarity gets lost again, and that can really challenge a person's stability and strength. It may cause you to feel kind of helpless and hopeless when you're caring for folks in this situation. And it's impossible to just get over it because the losses continue to happen over a prolonged period of time. You know, all of us want certainty, permanence, predictability. That's human nature. We want things to be clear. But ambiguity, and that's what comes with dementia, ambiguity can be kind of devastating. And there's a layer of ambivalence to this as well. The feeling of both wanting to be doing what you're doing, and you do fine work, and Elaine was so right to thank you because every day you make a difference in person's lives. But there's this ambivalence between wanting to do what you're doing and the feeling of not wanting to do it at the same time. On some days, a person may have the feeling of wishing they didn't have to be there, or that this is an ordeal and will it be over soon. And on other days, caring for somebody can be a gift, both to you as a staff member and to the care receiver. So let's talk for a moment about disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief refers to a grief which is hidden or not validated. Losses are not appreciated or understood by others. They're not publicly acknowledged or socially shared. And this contributes to feelings of isolation. You know, grief can be disenfranchised due to a lack of awareness and due to stigma accompanying a diagnosis of dementia. The other piece around this grief is very often dementia is an invisible disability on the surface. Unless you knew the person before and then spend a certain amount of time with the person to see the differences, you may miss what's going on with them. And that invisibility adds to this disenfranchised grief because we take good care of our people and they look super. This type of grief, well, actually, it might be familiar to you if you've experienced a loss, but others have not acknowledged the importance of that loss in your life. I was going to ask you to think of an example and type it into the chat. So, Paula, if you could just keep your eye on the chat. Everybody, put your thinking caps on for a second And think of a time that you've experienced a loss, but others didn't acknowledge the importance of that loss in your life. Maybe it was loss of a pet. Maybe it was a miscarriage. Maybe it was loss of a job. Loss of, I'm going to leave the blank. And if you're willing to share, nobody's going to see it except Paula, and she's just going to call it out to me. See if there's anything there, Paula.
I will. My
Thank you.
eyes are poised.
Fair enough. So disenfranchised grief, as I said, is when a grief happens and it's really not acknowledged by anybody else.
Oh, here's one: loss of independence to do full duties at their job.
Right. Okay. Loss of independence. You know, when someone has, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, they're coming in.
They're coming in now. It's interesting to me that everybody as an individual will have an individual take on this. And I'm actually expecting to hear several different examples.
Yeah, losing yourself to addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, yeah, that just
Very
wait.
true.
Yeah, very true. Yes.
Very-
The loss of the ability to have children.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
A great colleague's sudden departure from work.
Yeah, yeah. These are great examples. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you know, when somebody has dementia, others may minimize the significance of their losses, such as a decline in the person with dementia's physical abilities. Others will suggest that the person with dementia appears to look fine, but because of the staff or caregivers' intimate knowledge of the person, they tend to notice declines in cognitive or physical abilities that others don't, and that's sort of a private loss to you as a staff member.
Here's
Or
another
others may.
excellent example. Oh, sorry. Another
Go ahead. What's your excellent example?
exactly what you're saying. So loss of independence to do what my clients love and to do by himself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the worker noticing those changes, right? Loss of self when unable to volunteer or work and drive.
I love that. And that really speaks to some of these things have come close to loss of purpose. I can't volunteer. I can't give to my community. I can't do things that made me feel good and gave me a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
The other thing that others may not appreciate is the psychological impact of ambiguous loss. There's that psychological piece to it, not just the physical piece of losses, but the psychological piece. And, you know, that's when this has not a dementia related, but just as an example, I sometimes get people in a room together and they're sharing their loss, and somebody will say how sad they are that their husband can't speak anymore, and they don't have conversation, and somebody else in the room will pipe up with, well, at least you still have a husband. So very often grief is not recognized and is not acknowledged. And you know, many of these losses and the grief experienced as a result of these losses, they can occur simultaneously. I know dementia is a long journey and things don't usually happen bang, 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 one right after the other. But sometimes losses do clump together and they can be experienced on a daily basis, both by the person with dementia, every time they discover they're frustrated and can't do something, and their family, friends, and caregivers.
And I have an example of that just came through in the chat when the client they were supporting couldn't write his name any longer. And it makes you sad to witness that loss for him.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you can't write your name, what does that do to your autonomy? You can't sign a check. You can't sign something at the bank. You can't sign advanced care directives. You can't sign powers of attorney. You know, there are ways around these things, but it's so disheartening, so disheartening. You lose a piece of yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to move on to the next slide here. I want to talk about grieving styles because we could talk about losses till the cows come home. I think we have a general idea. So let's talk about grieving styles. So on this slide, you can see that there's three different styles listed and a continuum. So, people will respond to and cope with grief in different ways. It's a process. And, grief has meaning and timing of its own. And researchers have identified a number of grieving styles based on how a person experiences their loss internally and how they express their loss to the outside world. So let's start with intuitive. Intuitive grievers tend to experience their grief as waves of feeling, and they show their feelings externally to others by crying, by talking about their loss, and connecting with others about their experiences. As an intuitive griever, you tend to cope by taking time to grieve and sharing your feelings with others. It may help to share your feelings with a supportive audience or even to join a peer support group. Then, at the other end of the spectrum, we have instrumental grievers. And these folks tend to experience their grief in a more cognitive way, and they're less likely to display emotions overtly as intuitive grievers do. As an instrumental griever, you tend to try to keep your feelings under control and to engage in problem-solving activities related to the loss instead of focusing on the pain of the loss itself. You may seek out social support, but you're unlikely to spend this time sharing your feelings. You may show grief by becoming anxious or agitated or hyper energetic, or by immersing yourself in tasks and projects. If your style of grieving is doing, it may help to get practical information, to find solutions to problems, or to do things for yourself and the person living with dementia. So at one end, intuitive style is mainly feelings. At the other end, the instrumental style is mainly doing. And then in the middle, whoop, that wasn't supposed to happen. Then in the middle, we have blended. So when you have a blended griever, they experience and express their grief using a mix of both cognitive and emotional coping styles. And while some people may be very strongly oriented towards one style, many people will fall somewhere along the continuum. It's important you know that one style is not better than another. People are just different, and the way they handle things are different. And for most of us, we're going to have a little bit of both, right? We might lean towards one style more than the other, but we're probably going to land somewhere in the middle of that continuum. Now we want the next slide. So grieving is a normal and a healing response to loss. The loss and the grief that you experience caring for a person with dementia, it's ongoing. It's not a one-time trauma like the sudden death of a family member or a friend. As changes occur, it can be helpful to identify and acknowledge the losses and to turn to your circle of support to talk about your grief in response to these changes. Some changes that may lead to feelings of grief might include losses in memory and cognitive function, loss of using public transit, loss of being able to go on outings, the need for extra medical appointments, or the stress of finding specialists. And I bet every frontline worker is sitting there nodding their heads at that. The move to a long-term care home, if that has to happen. Palliative care, the dying process and death. An adjustment to the loss for others in any congregate living situation, because it is not just the person with the diagnosis and the care partners for that person with the diagnosis. It is every single person that ever interacts with the person who was given the diagnosis. So family, friends, and the other people that may be living in a group situation. Healing happens when you allow yourself to feel the pain and grieve the losses along the way, rather than avoiding or denying any grief at all. You can then move on and adapt to the losses by making positive changes to enhance quality of life for the person with dementia while taking care of your own needs too. So I'm going to talk about paradoxical thinking, and I promise I'm leaving time for questions at the end. I swear I am. If you have questions that I don't answer as I go through the talk, feel free to throw them in the chat. And Paula, you can just hold them because we may answer them off as we go, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So I'm pretty sure that what I've done for the first half hour was overview. And now I want to introduce you to possibly some new material. Paradoxical thinking. You know, it really helps to have a name for the losses and the grief that you're experiencing. It helps you understand and cope more effectively. And I want to talk about both and. So both and thinking. It's known that there is truth in two contradictory ideas. And sometimes it takes us a while to wrap our heads around that. It's when you have both and thinking, it's being able to see the person as both here and not here. It's balancing two different ideas. And actually, it's shown that balancing these two different ideas at one time is less stressful than constantly looking for an absolute solution. So we want to try to avoid absolute thinking. I'm going to give you some examples over the next few slides. So both gone and still here. Here's some examples for that one. I take care of both them and myself. I am both a caregiver and a person with needs. I both wish it was over and wish the person keeps on living. And those are two opposite ends of an extreme that are true at the same time. They both coexist at the same time. So what you're trying to do with paradoxical thinking, this both and, is finding a way to make sense out of something that does not make sense. Got to find the middle ground. To avoid absolute thinking, for example, acting as if the person is completely gone or being in denial that changes are occurring, those are two examples of absolute thinking. It's learning to hold two opposing ideas in your mind instead of focusing on one extreme. So you're seeing the person as both here and gone. So here are some examples. You know, grief with dementia, it can be a profound and a painful paradox. The person with dementia is physically present, and as the disease progresses, more and more psychologically absent. So whatever you call, whether you call them clients, residents, patients, whether it's a relative or a friend with the disease, they're here, but they're unable to necessarily understand, respond, or react in the same way as they did before. And you miss and grieve their ability to connect in this moment and time. For example, you may feel married and not married if you have a spouse with dementia. Even though a parent is always a parent, you might feel like both a daughter and a parent if you're taking care of either your mom or dad who has dementia. You are both a staff carer and a person with needs. You may love the family member with dementia deeply and feel hurt that they don't seem to know who you are. Because as Elaine said earlier, when people live with you for years and years and years in group homes, they do become like family. These ambiguities are normal for the disease, but they can cause confusion, they can stir up mixed emotions, they can make you feel uncomfortable. And if you're experiencing these conflicting feelings, it's normal and it's common. It's not pleasant, but it's normal and it's common. So a goal for care partners is to learn to recognize and understand the paradox and accept two seemingly contradictory ideas at the same time. You want to try to find that middle ground. You want to avoid absolute thinking. So this is an example of how one daughter who was taking care of her mom started to look at ambiguous loss differently. Something's lost, but something is not lost. So I started to look for things that were still part of my mom. She still has a sense of humor, and I can still share a laugh with her. She still has an emotional part of her. So I zero in on the emotion of the event because it's on a level where she gets it. As staff, would a version of this coping technique be helpful to you? If, as staff, you remembered two things. One, there are losses, but there will be bits that are not lost. There still will be positives, things that people can do. And to remember that as cognitive function disappears, the ability to feel emotion remains. This is a huge piece. This is very important because as our cognition due to dementia diminishes, we act from emotion. Our sensory gives us input and our emotions start driving our behaviors and our actions because our cognition has become damaged. So I want you to kind of remember both the idea that there'll be something positive to find and focus on, and always emotion remains. Now, paradoxical thinking, it takes practice. To make this mind shift, you might practice changing how you view the losses that you're experiencing by replacing either or thoughts with both and thoughts. So there are some examples on the sheet right now. And put your thinking caps on again. You might even type an example right into the chat box for Paula to share with us. I can either take care of the person living with dementia or myself. Well, that's the either or thinking. We want to get away from that. I can take care of both myself and the person living with dementia. I either care about the person with dementia exactly as they are now, or I miss how they used to be. No, both. I both care about the person living with dementia exactly as they are now, and I miss how they used to be. So I don't know if any of you have been struck by the thought that you have and both and that you want to share. If you do, type it in the box. I'm going to go on to some other examples while you're thinking. Staff or caregivers. So I want you to think of yourself as part of the red here on the slide. Many caregivers agree that although their work is difficult, it also has rewards. I'm a kind person and I can say no. I could have done better and I forgive myself because let me tell you, when we are caring for folks living with dementia, we are never perfect all the time. I enjoy my job and I feel overwhelmed. Thought you might relate to that one. I want to help and I'm not available today. I take my group of friends and I need time away from them. So these are just some examples for you. Effects of ambiguity. Well, it impacts relationship. It affects the staff and family well-being. It can bring up conflicts. Families or group homes or care homes, they may give up rituals, they may give up traditions. When it comes to care partner well-being, their emotional health and self-care might be put on a back burner. They might develop illnesses related to stress. Unfortunately, substance abuse and possible abuse of the person who has a diagnosis of dementia might occur. Staff feeling stressed or even burned out. It's a combination of ongoing care and missing the person that was. And so when things are ambiguous, it can freeze grief and it blocks coping. But this is what we have for you. I actually have 3 booklets that I'm really going to recommend that you look up online or get a hold of. This particular booklet is Dementia and Staff Grief. It's a manual for healthcare providers, live link there. What I'm going to do is just flip ahead to the next slide and give you a sense of the material covered in this booklet. What is grief? Why is the issue of staff loss and grief important? What is the impact of unattended grief on staff and quality of care? Grief support for staff is essential to person-centered care, and we're always talking about that, or relationship-centered care. The impact of unattended grief on person-centered care. Educating staff in a palliative approach and supporting emotional health. There are some case studies. I'm not going to read the whole slide. I'll put you to sleep, and I don't want you to sleep. But I want you to know that this was designed for exactly the situation that many of you will find yourself in. And there are quite a few case studies that I think might be useful as a staff to get together and look at and discuss. There are employer strategies and a lot of additional resources. The other thing, and I'm not going to show it to you because this is an hour long. This is a 1-hour film, but acknowledging staff grief when working with dementia. This presentation discusses how staff grief and loss impacts staff and their work with people in dementia in a variety of settings, not just long-term care, not just the community. Examples of organizations and peer-led strategies to support staff when a person with dementia dies were examined, and a study that looks at peer-led debriefs in response to staff grief in care home environment were highlighted. Key ingredients for a successful peer debrief, facilitation strategies, and a review of key models that may prove beneficial to staff were discussed. And self-care techniques and the introduction of the new Alzheimer's Canada resource that I just talked to you about, dementia and staff. There's another resource that I think is pretty important, and this is for clients. So this is supporting clients through ambiguous loss and grief strategies for healthcare providers. Again, this is a booklet to help you support people who've received a diagnosis. And then we know that you don't just support the people in your care, you support the families and friends of the people in your care. And so there is a third booklet, Ambiguous Loss and Grief in Dementia, and it's a resource for individuals and families. So I truly recommend those 3 booklets to you. Now I'm just going to take you through Pauline Boss's 7 guidelines for the caregiving journey. And here are some ideas that she says. You've got to find meaning. How do you make sense of it? Naming it makes a big difference. Using that paradoxical thinking, that both and thinking. Find forgiveness and spirituality, because those things increase our tolerance for ambiguity. Continue, but adapt rituals. Don't abandon. Don't just give things up. I think adaptation is the key word for the journey of dementia. Balancing control with acceptance. So the main cause of distress is not being able to resolve the problem. It's actually not this burden of caregiving or the severity of the disease. It's our sense of helplessness that we can't do something. We can't solve. We want to solve things. So what helps? Well, it's important to accept that you can't change some things. So you want to look for opportunities for success. You want to decrease self-blame. You want to recognize the ambiguity. And you want to master one's internal self, whether you relax with meditation or prayer. I'll tell you what hinders balancing control, acceptance, the fact that you don't have control and you have to accept things that you don't like, is believing that bad things only happen to bad people. Believing the harder that you work, the more you avoid. Yes, we all have to work hard, but hard work doesn't always take away some of the situations. Broadening your identity. Well, as a staff member, your role may not change very much. But having said that, as a staff member, maybe you need to learn some new skills. Maybe it's palliative care. And there may be a shift in other people's roles as dementia unfolds. Your opportunity for how you support people. Maybe it started out with more physical care and it evolved from physical care to recreational care as well, therapeutic recreation. And family and other supports may have changing roles. So you really have to think about who's helping now, who might you get in to help, who plays what roles, and that shifts as the journey continues all the time. So think about making sure that you revise your identity, that you're doing something as positive as you can within the ambiguity of the situation. What would hinder is being disconnected, either the person disconnecting from everybody or isolation. We saw that during COVID. We discussed that a tiny bit earlier. Isolation, not good for anybody. Managing mixed emotions, learning to live with ambivalence. And sometimes for some people, it benefits finding rituals to mark the loss and to honor the person. It can help make the loss real, and it gives other people a chance to acknowledge it. Normalizing anger and guilt, they're part of the journey. Conflicting feelings are normal. Talking it out with people is good. What will hinder you, what will hold you back is denying the mix of emotions or not talking about thoughts you're having. Just going to advance to the next one now. Holding on and letting go. Wow. Recognizing the person is here and in some ways gone, grieving what's lost and celebrating what remains, right? We're bringing you back to these practical ideas, creating new memories, trying to get some oral history, maybe making a scrapbook, finding new connections, anything that we can do to help. What are ways to remember? And sometimes they're for us as much as the person. Rediscovering hope. So what gives you hope? And again, I'm going to ask if you've got your thinking caps ready, get your fingers ready, type into the chat. What gives you hope? Well, maybe it's not hope for a cure in the next few years. I'd love it, but maybe we need to let go of unrealistic hopes. Maybe our hope is not for a cure, but it becomes a hope for a peaceful and happy life. Maybe what will help is becoming more comfortable with ambiguity, laughing, imagining new options, feeling good about yourself, even when things don't go as planned. When you try your best, when you're trying your hardest, the wheels come off sometimes. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Please feel good about yourselves. What hinders? Yes, Paula.
Just a second. They're rolling in. Just a sec.
Okay.
So family gives me
Uh-huh. Yep.
precious moments that are memorable, gives
Yep.
people hope.
Yep.
I'm going to say celebrating the small successes
Yep.
gives people hope.
These people don't
Seeing a
need me.
change. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, these people don't need me. They know this.
I'm
They
going to
stuff.
say seeing a modification support somebody and they're happy.
Yes.
That's nice. That's very hopeful because I think it gives us that sense you can do it.
Oh, what a win-win.
Yeah. Oh, taking time for yourself boosts hope. Any other brilliant ideas out there? We've got 62 people on the line now. Let's see.
They've got another chance soon. I've got another slide where they can type in if they haven't typed in yet.
Oh, this is good. Hope that I can make a positive difference, big or small, with the people I support. I love that because that's when you bring every day, right? That I hope I can make a difference.
And I believe that you do with that attitude.
Look at this, seeing the one you love is comfortable and good in their skin.
Yes. Yes. Mm.
That builds
You know,
hope.
those are great examples. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing. Great examples. You know, what hinders us sometimes is when we have hopes that are unrealistic. And sometimes as staff, we need to support family and friends from having unrealistic hopes, or insisting on an end to suffering. That, you know, it's part of life. You know, if you're going to insist there's no suffering in life, you're going to struggle more
Mhm.
than you.
And actually, that is a link to the last comment here is being there to help in any way possible. And I like that flexibility because, yeah, it builds hope,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
You can adapt and be where you need to be when you need to be there. Yeah.
got it. Isn't that interesting? It leads, thank you for that comment. It leads right to, I have two quotes to the next quote. Let your former hopes and dreams give way to the discovery of new ones. That's something worth thinking about. And important that while you give care, you also picture in your mind what your future might be like. New connections, new knowledge, new hobbies, new travel. Um, we really need to think about the present and the future. How about taking time to mind yourself? Now, this was alluded to in the comments that you shared. Take good care of yourself. Foster your hobbies, your opportunities to relax and rejuvenate. Build them into your life. You know, if you're feeling hopeless and depressed, there is no shame in that. It is the work we do, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. Please seek professional support. Talk to a counselor. There are free services. If it's around dementia, you might want to talk to somebody at the Alzheimer's Society. Maybe you can find a regular support group or a social group. You'd be surprised what just going to the I don't know, Aquafit with the same group of people, same time every week will do for you. Getting out, talking to people, or sharing your feelings with people that you feel safe to share with. Okay, Paula, get ready. Here's my question. I want to know one thing that you've been doing to take care of yourself. So type that in the chat, and Paula, as moderator, you can read those responses out.
I will.
What is,
Although I've got a good answer.
what
May I answer?
you may go ahead.
People who know me, my crafts, my hobbies, my interests there are definitely something to look after myself.
Stunning cross stitch ability, stunning. So,
And we have a person who said reading. So time for
ready?
yourself to read something that you enjoy. Love it.
Great. Now I put a second question up there. So it's a 2-for-1 now, folks. What is one thing that you've been doing to take care of yourself? Share that. But what is one thing that brings you energy and or joy?
Okay, I'm going to continue with some of these answers because I think this person put
Mhm.
in one that falls under both categories. So getting 8 hours of sleep every night.
Sleep
Fast
is
and furious.
essential.
Fast and furious, Robin.
Okay.
Setting limits is what I've been doing to take care of myself. Excellent. Wait, taking vacations, indeed. Wait, I've got 15 to go through, Robin, just a sec. Eating
That's
well,
fine.
taking time for yourself, going to the gym, and self-reflection time. Ooh, I'd like to hear more about that.
Could
Pausing.
be journaling, could be just sit and stare time.
Yeah. Taking time for yourself and spending time outside. Wise. Very wise. Yoga and eating healthy. Agreed. Oh, journaling. Excellent skill. And joy and energy for music and family. Oh, there's all kinds of good advice. I can't keep up. Reading jokes to laugh, and recently found at a conference that adults don't nearly laugh nearly as much as we should. So it's an important way to take care of yourself. It releases happy neurotransmitters. It does indeed. There's
Absolutely.
laughter yoga is a thing, just as an aside. Following the Canadian Food Guide and
Mhm.
maintaining your own blood sugar. So that's good monitoring your own health. Um, I take a day to do some skincare, hair care, and self-care to reset. Yes. And yoga. Love that. Lots of neat ideas. Taking vacations, reflecting, and meditating. Yeah, games with your family and friends. Yeah, did we let go of game night when we're stressed? And we really should be doing more game night. One thing that brings me energy or joy is spending time with your family. Yeah, intentional time.
I see a theme here, Paula. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah, acknowledging my support team and individuals make our lives easier from going to the grocery store or groceries, yeah, store to the garbage man. Excellent.
Thank you
Acknowledging
for
care.
sharing.
Yeah, booking self-reflection at the end of a workday into your schedule. What went well today? What could I have done better? Small wins for the day. That is so beneficial, and we don't always do that. We are really good at focusing on what didn't get done. Hey, love that intentional positivity. Bringing these residents in prayer to God and walking. Excellent. Absolutely. Okay, weather depending gardening and to rejuvenate walking barefoot on the beach. Wow. Yeah, I think
I'm going to do that.
I want to hang out with them. Yeah. Meditation. I know Robin is eating ice cream. Wait,
No, I'm trying to control my ice cream urges.
you're controlling your ice cream intake?
Yes.
Meditation and gardening. Yeah. Wait a second. Splurging occasionally, I'm certain is fine.
Yes, occasions, gorgeous.
Okay, what is this? Just wait. Treating myself with kindness. That's exceptional. Understanding, and especially during challenging times. Yeah, I think a lot of us have negative self-talk vibes sometimes, and changing that internal
Mhm.
words,
Uh,
those internal words are good. Oh, wait, this is just a second. Oh, the laughing avoids wrinkles. LOL. I like
well,
that.
I don't care if it gives me wrinkles. I'm going to laugh every day anyway. Sometimes we doom scroll on our phones, but I have somebody I follow. It's I might be funny. That's her thing. I might be funny, and I start my day with 3 minutes of humor every morning.
Love
But I
it.
have to do my exercises first. Then I reward myself with 3 minutes of humor. But it's a good way to start your day, and I end the day with some gratitudes every day.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
gratitude.
I think that the barrage of comments has ceased now. So thank you everybody for participating with Robin.
Yes.
Just to follow up on your comment, Robin, about the humor, during COVID, when many of us were redeployed, our team here at Homewood, for all of us redeployed citizens, workers, would get together at lunch and do 5 minutes of comedy, right? So either something that they found on YouTube or just something that they
Mhm.
thought we would all enjoy. We had some books brought in with different jokes and whatnot, or even if it was a reflection of funny stories. And I just think sometimes those healing moments actually bring teams together too.
Mhm.
You can kind of share a smile, share, that wink kind of that this was funny, this was a good time, and share that going forward. And that might be something that teams want to try also, is the, healing going forward.
Yeah, a little humor goes a long way.
Little humor goes a long way. Excellent. All right, Robin, I have you in
Now,
your final 15 minutes with us.
yeah,
So how would you like to use that time?
I'd like to finish my slides,
Oh,
and
would
then
you like to do that? Sorry, go
I'd
ahead.
like to finish my
Yes,
slides.
by all means, I'll mute myself. Go ahead.
Just the kind of person I am. I gave you some well, I thought I was going to give you live links in the chat, but they're on the slides. I've also given you references to everywhere that I got the material if you want to do a deeper dive. But I think what I really want people to know is that Alzheimer's societies are there for any type of dementia. If you're experiencing cognitive change, we are the go-to place. We're not just about Alzheimer's disease in quotes. And we can offer a wide variety of services at a very reasonable cost. Free, zero, zip, nada, right? It doesn't cost you a thing to use the services of the Alzheimer's Society. So there is no reason not to reach out. If you need information on dementia, please feel free to ask. If dementia is not only part of your working life, but part of your personal life, please do not hesitate. We honestly are here to help from before diagnosis, when you're just trying to figure out, is this a concern or not? Should I be going to the doctor? How do I even prepare for that doctor's appointment? Right through to the end of the journey. So please be aware that we're there for you. The other thing that might be really, really helpful, especially when you're working in a situation that it's a challenge to get everybody together to do education at the same time, is something called Alz Educate. Now, this is a wonderful platform. It's absolutely free. Again, the price is right. It's absolutely free. And they have a section designed specifically for healthcare providers. So all you have to do is go on the Alz Educate website, make yourself a free account. And although there's many more, I've listed a few things that might be so useful to you. There's a certificate program, Introduction to Dementia. You, again, can get certificates for a You First program. That one does have a cost because there's a book involved and other wheel. Aging in the Senses, Communication, Person-Centered Care, Dementia-Friendly Communities. Finding Your Way is about people, sadly, Elaine alluded to this earlier, how often people can be disoriented and become lost, not recognize familiar areas, go seeking something that does appear familiar to them. I would really recommend you check out the Finding Your Way website. There are many, many more. If you go on the website, so you type in the www.alzeducate.ca, this is what it's going to look like. And you need to scroll down a little bit, and then you can make yourself an account. And then you can either attend live webinars, or you can attend on demand, or you can take courses. So think about it. It's free. It's the latest. Now, I alluded just a second ago to the Finding Your Way website, and I want to encourage all of you. You know, this is available in 13 languages. You can print an ID kit for everybody in your care. You can take 4 little 15-minute modules that are free. There is a lot of information there that might be useful. And there's a great booklet on there about keeping people safe in the community. And it also addresses home safety for people living with dementia. And even though you run as the group homes have a change perhaps in population and that population's needs, you may want to re-examine some of your safety ideas. So please check that website out. Again, when you get the slides, it's a live link. Everything's live. This is what the web page will look like when you come on it to start with. You'll notice there are sections for family. You would call yourself family. And there's also sections for first responders. There are example stories, there are videos, and it's really important. You can even make it, if you're at my age, a little larger. You can blow it up so you can read it, and you can put it in one of those 13 languages. Now, if you do want to contact us here at the local Waterloo Wellington Alzheimer's Society, this is the contact information for Waterloo Wellington. And I did want to point out that we have an Instagram account, we have a YouTube channel, we have all sorts of things that you might want to come on our website and check out. There's the website live link. And last but not least, your comments and questions. So let's see each other. Again, we don't need to look at a slide for comments and questions. So I'm going to stop the screen share. There we go. We'll come back, and this is a chance to type it in and or come off. You have the ability to unmute yourselves, so you can come off mute. If you have a question or a comment, I'd be interested. If you all fell asleep, I won't be interested. I'll be devastated.
I can see people moving. They're awake. They're awake.
I'll say
Okay.
thank you, Robin. This love us, and I think their presentations complement each other. I love the ambiguous loss and grief piece. I think you've done a fabulous job of presenting it. And I've learned something new. This I was also going through your slides, going, "Oh, I like that." So I think you captured that beautifully, and a great reminder to everybody to be aware that this is real. I love the fact that you added all those links at the end to remind people of all the other services we have at the various chapters.
Yeah.
Great work.
Yeah, they're available everywhere. But seriously, get the booklet. Even if you don't buy it, just print one. Even if you only print one for each home that's on the talk today, I think it's really valuable to
They are great.
leave
great books.
leave it in the break room. Maybe you don't want to read it on your break, but have it available and let people have a look at it. And then you might end up printing off some more and handing them out to people as needed.